I'm holding in my hand some of the most, two of the most important news stories I think I've read that clearly tell me that we have entered a whole new phase era, a whole new level of collapse. I want to talk about these real quick because it's time to readjust and reprioritize some things pretty quickly. The first story is from Scientific American. It came out on June 13th. I'm going to read some of it to you because I want you to hear this, and I want you to hear it coming from me because you'll pay more attention to it. The headline says, Europe braces for serious crop losses and blackouts. London, one of the driest spring seasons on record in northern Europe, has sucked soils dry and sharply reduced river levels to the point that governments are starting to fear crop losses. And France, in particular, is bracing for blackouts as its river-cooled nuclear power plants may be forced to shut down. For those of you who don't know, France is almost totally reliant on nuclear power. They have more reactors concentrated in one place than any country in the world. French Agriculture Minister Bruno Le Maire warned this week that the warmest and driest spring in half a century could slash wheat yields and might even push up world prices, despite the UN Food and Agriculture Organization's predicting a bumper global crop due to greater plantings. And we know that those books are already cooked. We've seen that clearly on the World News Desk. There is no bumper harvest this year. The problem, this is important, appears to be not that the reactors might overheat because of the lack of water, but that the depleted rivers themselves might overheat, causing ecological havoc when the water returns to them after cooling the reactors. Rainfall down 40 to 80%. The Geneva-based World Meteorological Organization said last week that between February and May of this year, rainfall over Europe as a whole ranged from 40 to 80% of the long-term average from 1951 to 2000, and in many parts of Western and Central Europe, it was even below 40%. Between March and May, the outcome was even lower, with France, Germany, and southeastern England the worst hit. Here's another good piece of this. German rivers lowest in a century. Some 3/4 of oilseed rape goes into the country's biodiesel industry. You know how we feel about that. The biggest in the 27-nation bloc, leaving it critically short of feedstock and either forcing imports or cutting production, with a consequent knock-on effect on the country's and the Europeans' efforts to cut climate-changing carbon emissions. Failed effort. About Britain, quote, the recent rain has made very little difference, if at all, agriculturally, simply because when the ground gets as dry as it has been, when you do get some rain, it simply runs straight off in what in effect is a concrete surface. More nuclear reactors are going to have to shut down due to a drought. Remember the bearing that electrical production, the direct relationship has with GDP growth and economic activity. It's clear now that Mother Earth is in charge, and Mother Earth is setting the agenda. Therefore, it's becoming harder for us to predict what's going to happen and where, because we could not have predicted a 9-point earthquake in Fukushima, Japan. We could not have predicted tornadoes in Massachusetts, biblical floods down the Mississippi, historic droughts in Europe, and of course the huge drought that is now plaguing China, which has just had a couple of rainfalls, but it's not going to make much difference. It was a drop in the bucket. Sorry about that. Mother Earth is in charge. And I think that's something that in a broader sense we all need to pay very close attention to. We can all see collapse accelerating almost exponentially. We're going to talk more about that in a second. But now, take a breath for a second, because this next story, I swear, if you've been with us for any length of time, is going to knock you on the floor. It was on the World News Desk yesterday, I think, and it's from the Christian Science Monitor. But before I tell you about this story, let's just go back. The EU is melting down now. Greece is having a full-scale revolution. Riots are engulfing China. China is erupting in huge civil unrest. We're documenting that on the World News Desk. Same with the Middle East, North Africa. Everything's fallen. We can all see this now. Now, with that in mind, let's go to this story from the Christian Science Monitor on June 14th. The headline says, I'm going to try to read this with a straight face because I know you all are going to be hearing this the same way I did. Time to pitch your tent in New York City, question mark. U.S. touts urban camping plan. U.S. plans to create great urban parks set to begin in New York City. Interior Secretary Ken Salazar said Monday it's part of Obama's bid to reconnect young people with the great outdoors. I'm touched. By Patrick Wall, June 14th, New York. Nothing says camping like a charcoal grill, a tent next to an open fire, and a clear view of the New York City skyline. So says Interior Secretary Ken Salazar, who announced plans Monday to extend trails around New York Harbor, draw new visitors to the area's 10 national parks, and transform a small camping area into America's largest urban campground. Anybody ever been to New York? I mean, I lived in Brooklyn for a while. Quote, what we are doing in New York, Mr. Salazar said in Brooklyn at the future site of the campground in Jamaica Bay, quote, will create a model for a new generation of great urban parks in America, close quote. Recommended the Eat, Pray, Love effect going way beyond the family vacation. Visitors today can choose from 5 campsites at Floyd Bennett Field, which served as New York's first municipal airport in the 1930s and has been part of the Gateway National Recreation Area since '72. The National Park Service plans to expand the campground to 90 sites within the next 2 years and up to 600 sites when eventually completed. The park enhancements are a part, blah, 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 blah. All right. In case you didn't figure this out, what this has telegraphed clearly is the U.S. government is rushing to prepare residents of New York City to be sleeping in tents because there will be no power and there may be no water. And these are tent cities that are being camouflaged in this absolute time of crisis as some new expenditure of the Interior Department to encourage people to camp. I don't think so. And if the U.S. government is aware enough to understand, and they're absolutely right, this is what I would be urging people to do, except for I tell the truth right now, is they're expecting people to be needing to sleep in tents in major metropolitan areas within a very short period of time. They're trying not to panic the people. That really says a lot to me. I've never seen a story like that since I've been doing this, and that makes it very clear that we are exactly where we think we are. Of course, we all know it, and it's getting worse. We're making some changes to adapt on the World News Desk. We need to meet your needs better. We have been tracking, but not in a broad basis, infrastructure thefts, especially copper thefts around the world, because they are multiplying. If you've just been thinking that what you saw on the World News Desk was all that's going on, that's not true. This is 10 news stories that showed up on Google within a 2-hour period. We're seeing 30, 40, 50 turn up on Google a day now, and we're going to try and count those. Obviously, we're not going to put them all on the World News Desk. But as I'm watching this unfold, and as we go through our preparations here in Sebastopol, we're seeing little things brought to our attention that need to be taken care of quickly. And what we have now as the infrastructure thefts, the massive thefts of copper, and bear in mind when the copper is gone, they'll go for stainless steel, they'll go for iron, they'll go for cement, they'll go for, copper just seems to be the high-ticket item. So we're using that as a barometer to try and count those every day. We're going to bring you some of the most important ones that show the ramifications that can happen when people steal copper wire that's transmitting electricity or telephone calls or whatever, or information to streetlights. I want to make you aware that this is a growing problem. In my judgment, that's going to be one of the most important things that we need to keep you abreast of, so that you can hopefully try to track and learn from all these experiences to anticipate the situations you might encounter when somebody steals a transformer or some phone wire or some streetlight wiring where you live. That's important. We're also expanding and reorganizing the categories of civil unrest on the World News Desk. We're going to have a global unrest category every day showing the number of incidents, and a civil unrest United States section showing the incidents as they multiply here. Flash mobs are exploding, and it's the same situation with flash mobs as it is with copper thefts. We have not been able to count or track all of the incidents, and that's just a word we can use to monitor. But the incidents of civil unrest are exploding, and I have every reason to believe that within a couple of weeks we might be seeing twice as many incidents of both. Things are happening that fast. So it's time to reevaluate priorities. Last night here in Sevastopol, we had a 35-minute blackout. And even though I was smart enough to get landlines to make sure that I would still have phones in the event of a blackout, what I didn't keep up on was that every phone needed a battery. So that when we had the blackout, every phone had dead batteries, and I still wound up with no phones. These are all drills, people. This is all the stuff you learn from and you watch from now. And you start preparing yourself, your family, your lifeboat, your neighbors, your community. And that's why the World News Desk is going to continue to be more important to you on a daily basis. We're there, dude. This is it. This is the clip. And I have to re-emphasize again, it's very clear to me now that collapse is going to increase exponentially, just as the exponential growth that brought us here. This is going to get faster and faster. And please continue to let us know what you want to see on the World News Desk. John Barnes, our supervising editor, will track that. We're going to try to reflect that. I want to thank everybody who's submitting member-submitted breaking news. You're doing a great job. Everyone who's catching little things and throwing them our way, we love it. That's what makes COLLAPSENET the place that it is. I'm glad you're here. This has been a long update. I'm going outside now because we got some work to do on the house, and I'm happy to report that we now have 35 edibles planted on the property here. We've been discovering a lot of things that were here already, but I just planted grapefruit, lemon, and lime yesterday in a special sunny part of the land, and boy, that's so reassuring every day. And I hope you all are planting something too, and I hope you all are taking steps to prepare. We'll be in touch. Get your shit together. Here it comes.